TV umpire to director, we have a review. Can you rock and roll it for me, please?
Welcome to Rock and Roll It, the world's only sports podcast where the depths of the insights correspond directly to the length of the panelists' beards. Just a bit of self-deprecatory humor there. Let's get cracking. Today we're going to be rock and rolling the final test, the fifth test between England and India at the Oval. A dramatic test, perhaps one of the best tests in our lifetimes, and ending one of the best series in our lifetimes. So we're going to get into the analytical side of it, but first let's talk about the emotional part. And guys, just tell me, where were you and what emotions were you going through during the final 2 days of this test? Sid, if you can start us off.
So I was, of course, at the Oval, watching it live. It was, yeah, on the fourth day itself, we had started to get that kind of post-series blues because for the most of the day we knew that the series was going to end that day, and it had been a very exciting series for 24 days. The fourth day was the 24th day of the series, and it almost when India started coming back, firstly that Siraj, uh, Siraj bowling that 9 over spell or 8 over spell in the morning, then going up for his for some running repairs. And it's not the Oval is not one of the ideal grounds where if you are a fast bowler and you are in your at the bitter end of a series because you have to climb at least 3 floors worth of stairs to get into the dressing room and get looked at. Then he came out and he has been fielding at mid-on or mid-off when Bumrah has not been there. It's just as a leader of the attack, just with an arm around Prasid Krishna especially and Akashdeep, keeping them on track, telling them if they are veering off track. Now, perhaps he had just come back in, so he was not at mid on. And what happens? First ball, Harry Brook hits a catch straight to him, and possibly he had not yet found his bearings, he had not yet marked his territory, he had not yet seen where the this is as far as I can go. And of course, it's not the case here. We have boundary triangles, but if it had been just a rope, he his foot would have gone in the air and would have landed properly and safely inside back in the inside the field of play. It reminded me of Dion Nash in that tri-series game in Australia where he took a similar catch and a very very close finish, and he landed on his foot touched the rope where the rope overlapped when like there was a little bit of extra rope and it overlapped. If it had been just one rope, he would have been fine. It almost had two ropes. So yeah, and after that, for the 5 minutes later, Siraj was back at mid on, and they showed the slow motion replay on the big screen, and the whole crowd. By the way, the crowd was great. It was when if England were doing well, you would feel, oh, this crowd is 80% England fans, and when India were doing well, you would feel this crowd is 80% India fans.
Knowledgeable fans.
Which, yeah, both of which cannot be true. So they were like really into it. But when they showed the slow motion replay, the whole crowd went, oh, ah, like you are being embarrassed right in front of the whole crowd, 20,000 people, and I just can't believe what Siraj was. I can't fathom what Siraj was going through at that time. About 4 5 overs later, they went for lunch. Siraj did not walk towards the dressing room. He walked towards from. He was now at the mid on at the other end, towards the dressing room. But he did not start walking towards the dressing room. He walked towards Prasid Krishna at fine leg, who was at the away end from the dressing room. I don't know what was said, but they hugged, and I don't think much was needed to be said because everybody knows nobody means to do this. It just happened. and but the game ran away so quickly from India after that, and this is a match where I might have become a bit of a baseball convert also, because it was it these were testing conditions where they really counter-attacked, starting with Ben Duckett in the first innings, Zach Crawley, and then Harry Brook. It was not These were not easy conditions. These were not what we have always been saying, oh, baseball can succeed only in flat conditions. Did take their risks. It does really suit their natural game. But yeah, then in the second session, it was like, oh, now it's gone. It's all over. This is a one-sided finish because India didn't have any bowlers left. 2 days ago itself, Siraj and Akashdeep and Prasid Krishna had practically bowled through a whole session to keep India alive, and Siraj was now coming up to having bowled more overs than anyone else in the series. And bear in mind that India have bowled fewer overs, which means he has bowled a higher proportion of overs than Vokes has done for England, which means he is getting shorter breaks. Rest, rest, uh, rest exertion cycle is getting disrupted. So for the first time, it started feeling like even Siraj might not have enough in his legs to now give for India. Akashdeep, if you remember, he gave chase to one ball. It was so limp, he put his foot out, and unfortunately, the ball bounced into his other foot and rolled into the boundary, and the crowd was sticking into
And,
him.
and he was taking injections, right? As a painkiller, it seemed like.
Yeah. So on day two, he had bowled a long spell with a shoulder niggle, but now it was showing that even he didn't have it in him anymore physically, and never appreciate we don't quite appreciate the physicality of this sport as much as we do tactics and strategy and mental stuff. So, but when they started coming back and it it rained, it was a little frustrating for a moment, but then I felt, oh, we've been having the time of our life. There's nothing wrong in extending it by one day. It's a good after party that we have lined up on Monday, and we all remember what happened on Monday. First two balls went for fours. The first one was properly nailed by Overton. It felt that England had probably decided when they got the chance to regroup that whenever we have found ourselves in a jam, what have we done? We have attacked. What were you doing yesterday? You were not attacking. So probably they made their minds up they will attack, but then Siraj comes up with this ace from his pack with outswing. And it was not like a pre-decided plan. He just thought, I'll ball one outswingers as first ball and see what happens. And it not only did it swing well, it also seemed a way big. So that's when something clicked inside him, and he said, "Let's do it. I think I've got it, and I've got a new weapon." And whatever you say, whatever you do, you can look at the release, but your mind and body after such a long series is attuned to playing for the nip backer from Siraj, the wobble seam ball. So the feet were not moving that well. They were not getting close enough to the ball, and he pulled in a spell for the ages. And I couldn't be happier for Siraj. It's totally in awe of what Siraj did yesterday.
KK, I'm assuming you were in the office watching on
I
for
was
day
at
for
home.
the.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
at home watching, and I think it just felt like emotions that I had not really felt. So I was just like, when eventually they said, yeah, it's the India's like closest ever, victory by runs. Then I went back and saw this is the only time India have won by less than 10 runs, right? So India haven't had that. I think the next closest was I think 13 runs or something. It's that
Yeah,
Bombay
by
Test.
runs, this was, yeah, I think
Yeah,
13 was the next. They've won by
yeah,
one wicket, of course, in Mohali,
yeah,
but
yeah. Mohali.
in
Yeah.
terms of
So
runs, this was the closest. Yeah.
Welcome to following
yeah,
up.
yeah, and like the previous closest runs victory was in that Bombay Test where Australia were just chasing 104 or something. So that 13-run margin was kind of bigger than it looks, whereas this is a big target and a really small margin, right? And the 1 wicket win in Mohali, I mean, that's the only comparable match really in our living memory, because even by wickets, there have been two wick. I mean, there's that in Chennai in 2001, both against Australia in this century, right? Uh, Whereas England have had like both close victories and close defeats, even in recent times, to have felt this feeling of okay, here we go again. For India, it was very different. England, like even in the last 2 years, even in the baseball era, they've had two defeats, in Wellington and then Edgbaston 2 years ago against Australia, where I mean declarations kind of contributed to both. But again, those really close defeats, and they've had close victories like Edgbaston 2005 and so on. So for me, it just felt like completely like almost new territory, and just going through it, and we're the kind of people who poo-poo these things, right? But when you're watching a penalty shootout and then you look at the
Yeah.
guy stepping up, you look at the guy's face because that's, you see that and then puts the ball down, and you can, I mean, sometimes you get a sense this guy's gonna, put it away, or this guy's gonna miss, right? And looking at Atkinson's face, I was like, this guy's gonna pull it off for England,
Oh,
right? And
really? I
yeah, I
thought you'd
mean,
say the opposite.
well, Atkinson just looked, like
That's
in
true.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, you didn't see that. I mean, again, like I hate body language reading, facial expression reading, but I'm doing it now. But like, Jamie Smith looked kind of like, nervous, and like you could tell that this was, he wasn't playing like the Jamie Smiths, we know. Atkinson, from the time he came and then he hit that six and stuff, and I don't know, something about the way his face looked also. I was like, he's doing it. And then, you have all those little close misses, and Dhruv Jurel. I mean, it was less than 10 years ago that Dhoni first, did this thing of taking his glove off beforehand. And now we're like, it's not that long ago, but it's become such a tactic in at least white ball cricket that we're like criticizing Dhruv Jurel for not thinking about it in a situation where the bye isn't the first thing you think about. So, yeah. And
I,
so, you have
sorry,
these. Yeah, yeah,
sorry. I
sorry.
just want to add to this the extra story to it. Siraj had pointed it out to Gill
Mhm,
that they will run whatever happens. I'll bowl a wide Yorker. You tell Dhruv to
mhm.
take his glove off. But by the time Gill could even look at Jurel, Siraj was already running in. He didn't give him time to tell him, which is why he was standing up there at the top of the pitch and saying, "तू उसको बताया नहीं?"
Yeah. He was looking directly at Gill. He didn't look at Jorel.
Yeah.
He was looking
So,
at the captain saying, why is this guy standing there with two gloves on?
Yeah. So yeah, when all these, close moments and all these things happen, and they kind of going England's way, right? There's a diving effort when he hits the six from Akash Deep, and again it's Akash Deep who is one of the kind of tragic figures of this test match, right? Apart from that misfield where he tries to stop it with his foot, there's also a kind of cotton ball chance that isn't a chance because he kind of slips when he turns around, and it's gone. So again, it's Akashdeep who dives and it goes for six, and you're like, this is it. England are winning, even though they have like a guy with a dislocated shoulder who may have to bat and all that. But yeah, so that moment when like Siraj uh, bowls that cross seam Yorker, like it's again like amazing thinking to like be like, okay, I don't want it like swinging, veering this way or that away from my target. It basically hits the base of off stump. It's one of those, full tosses, that really low full tosses that you can't hit them like Atkinson was trying to hit into the leg side, right? And you knew he's going to try that. So that's like, and the accuracy of it and the pace of it in that spell at the end of this series where he's played every test match. Before that, he bowled a 146 kph full toss as well. And this was 143, I think, right?
I
We
think it
don't
was the
Yeah,
often.
fifth fastest
two of
ball of the
his
series. Yeah.
two of
Yeah.
his fastest balls. He's bowled only two balls above 145 in the whole series. One of them here. He's bowled only 20 balls. Was it 20? He's bowled 50 balls over 140. Five of them in this spell,
Hmm.
in his last
Yeah.
spell of the series.
Yeah. So like this, like whatever Atkinson's face may have said and stuff, Siraj was not going to let that happen. Like,
Siraj's face was saying, I believe. That's
yeah,
what it was saying.
basically that. Yeah, his wallpaper, that was the only thing, the only image in his mind. And
Yeah.
yeah, what a finish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually watched the entire day for alone in the Bombay office because it was a Sunday, there was nobody there. And
Mm,
honestly, this actually happened that at some point during that Root and Brook partnership, the housekeeping guys, I was away from my desk and they came and put the lights off. So then I was watching Root and Brook batting in the dark in the office in the gloom. And it felt like somebody had switched the lights off on the Indian Test cricket team because that was their body language during the end of that partnership. And it felt bleak, right? Because I know that I did lose my objectivity a little bit during this test. Not so much because I'm Indian or an India fan, because it would have felt so cruel had India lost this series 3-1, it felt like. And the
Yeah.
narrative would have switched so quickly from this was a great test series, great fight from an inexperienced side to 0-3, 1-3, 1-3 again. The narrative
Yeah.
would have moved very quickly to that. It would have been seen as another low point for Indian Test cricket following on from last season. And it really then, I mean, one of our colleagues was messaging as a joke saying, I'm sure IPL will announce the auction soon. But it did go through my mind of "Well, what is this going to mean for Test cricket in India? If this is yet another crushing loss in a series where the scoreline finally maybe doesn't tell the story of the series, but it is 3-1. India is very successful in white ball cricket. Is this going to lead to a this fear that we always have that Test cricket is going to start losing interest in our country? Is that going to happen? And then, and honestly, this happened. I finally found the housekeeping guys, told them to switch the lights on. Harry Brook had just got out then, and then Jacob Bethel got out two balls after they put the lights on. So some credit goes to the housekeeping staff at Urmi Estate for this win. And then on the fifth morning, I watched the test at home with my daughter, and I was so emotionally invested that I actually made her cry twice. Because once, when Josh Tongue got out, my daughter's six, I screamed so loudly and got so excited that she was just shocked. So she began to sort of shake. Then I explained to her that, don't worry, I'm happy. And then when Akashdeep was in off the boundary at long on, I just lost it. I couldn't understand why he's standing so many yards in. So then
To
I
prevent
started to,
because
pardon?
he was looking for couples to prevent a couple. He was instructed by the team to stand 20 yards in.
I didn't get it. So I was having a go at Akashdeep. I had a go at Dhruv Jurel for having both his gloves on. After a while, I saw my daughters crying outside and watch. She's still watching the match, but she had brought a little chair and was watching from outside the room. So then finally, I had to calm down and I called her back in and I said, relax, I promise I won't get so agitated. And then finally, luckily, she was back in the room for the winning moment when Siraj bowled that Yorker. I think at that stage, Siraj just said, I'm not trusting anybody. I'm not trusting the fielders, the keeper. I'm bowling a Yorker, I'm hitting the stumps, and that's how I'm taking that final wicket. But yeah, it was Siraj's what 186th over of the series. Just to put that in context, that is about 47 T20 in bowling innings. That's three IPL seasons worth of bowling. I don't want to make this a test versus T20 thing, but the guys put in three seasons worth of IPL bowling in one test series. And I think, Sidharth, you were making a great point that he is sometimes called a workhorse, but he is so much more skilled than that, right?
Oh, he has got every skill you need. He's got a good outswinger. He's got a wobble seam ball. He also has an in swinger, which he does not ball that often, but he does have an in swinger. So especially when if he's trying to bowl the wobble seam ball, it really does swing in also sometimes. He's got his pace does not come down. He's he's as accurate, if not more, in terms of length. He's as accurate as Bumrah, which is the biggest compliment you can give anyone because it's a company of two. Not even Pat Cummins is as accurate as Bumrah. It's that nobody bowls good length as much as Bumrah does, and only Siraj does comes close to him. Then sometimes his line can go all right, which is which is when you have the kind of first spell he had at Edgbus at Headingley, and the first spell here in at the Oval. But otherwise, he's got, and if it is reversing, he's on top of it. He's got everything that a fast bowler needs. There's for some reason he's not. Probably sometimes his line goes off, and he's also not had a lot of luck, which is what when you talk to people, and some of them are influential people in cricket, they turn around and say, "But where are the fifers?" And I'm like, you are supposed to know cricket more than us. It's not always about the outcomes. But then again, he's now what, 40 tests in? Uh,
Yeah.
so then people do start wondering if it is just luck, or whether he does not have this mythical, undefinable which is why I'm like really, really glad for him. He's 41 tests and
Yeah, his
averaging
average is about 32. Yeah,
31 now.
31. Yeah.
So these are not elite numbers. These are not. He's played in the times of Pat Cummins, Hazelwood, Bumrah, Shami, uh, of all this, Rabada. He's not. His numbers are not in that league,
Yeah.
which is
But
why
yeah.
people do question his credentials. So and they also say how many fifers, how many matches has he single-handedly won India, which is why I'm like really, really glad that this happened for him, so that they can see and he's not changed anything. He's been Siraj.
Yeah, he's one
So
of those bowlers on his numbers, even in South Africa, Australia, and England, which are supposed to be seam friendly. His average is still 31 in 23 tests. But
hmm.
somehow, in the 9 tests that India has won with him in these countries, his average is around 19 or less than 19. And he has played a role in almost all those wins. He has 7 4-wicket hauls in wins in Sena countries. So there were the two here, there's the one at Edgbaston, there was one at Cape Town. That was a 6-wicket haul. There's one at the Gabba, of course. And then he actually got two at Lords in 2021. He got four in each innings. He's even in the MCG 2020 test played his hand there, taking 5 wickets, plus the Perth test last year. So I have looked at all this, but I mean, that's also a sign that India win when, of course, Siraj is doing well, because if all your fast bowlers are doing well, then you're more likely to win, I guess, right?
But these two tests India have won with I call it non-replicable, even when they've replicated it within this series. But this is not how you win test matches where two fast bowlers are taking 17 wickets between themselves. And not on a green seamer where you need two or three spells to take those 17 wickets. These were just freaky wins at Edgbaston and here, that two fast bowlers are taking 17 wickets. It's not going to happen again and again. They have to play four strike bowlers suited for the conditions they are playing in. They cannot be bowling them into dirt. They have already successfully bowled Bumrah into dirt, who's now at BGT in Australia, who's now a 3 out of 5 test bowler, which is fair enough, which is good that the teams, both Bumrah and the team management and the BCCI can agree on how to get the best out of him. But you do not do that. You have to look after your fast bowlers. They are the most valuable commodity in our sport, and India have to look after them. They cannot. Siraj cannot be bowling these many overs every test. He's not getting any younger, and you have only so many overs in your legs.
We're marveling at, like, how he's bowling so with such intensity in his 186th over of the series and stuff. He didn't have to be bowling that many overs, right? He could
Absolutely.
he could have been exhausted, and like he would have been within his human sort of physical rights to be like completely down by then. That he wasn't was a bit of a miracle that India should be very thankful for. And yeah, the other thing about Siraj is that after 41 tests, look at a lot of great bowlers' records. They're not really that good after 41 tests say James Anderson and Stuart Broad were averaging mid 30s.
But they were
Uh,
playing on different pitches.
yeah, of course. But the other thing about the pitches is that like Siraj, uh, he kind of started towards the end of that really seaming pitch era in England, right? So
Hmm.
2021, yes. 22 when he went back there, not so much. Yeah, I mean South African pitches have been extreme. Uh, so it's not like he's always been bowling on green seamers outside Asia either. And in India, he's shown like signs like that Wankhede spell against New Zealand with the new ball, where he just blew them away. He's shown that those signs. He's not replicated that yet. But the thing is, after 41 tests, there's more than enough evidence of what all he can do. And in this test, he showed even more, of like the kind of things that people have kind of previously written Siraj off for not having the kind of smarts to like be like, okay, I'm going to set my field for the hook and you know, uh, get the guy out with a Yorker. I mean, he has done these kinds of things before, but like you tend to forget them quickly, right? But he kept reminding viewers over and over again in this series, the Bethel wicket, the Crawley wicket that I spoke about. And then uh, on that final day to just keep bowling outswing, it was also smart considering, how few runs India had to play with to like shut off one area of the field. Just four shots that England played against him went into the leg side, including, of course, that Atkinson six. But he didn't allow them to access that side of the field. And that kind of, for a batting lineup that likes to continually feel bat on ball, which is why, like Jamie Smith, you see him stepping out and pushing at the ball when he could have just left it. He's like, okay, he's bowling out swingers. I can leave it, wait for the next over. But it's not quite innate to this England team to play like that. And it was smart to do that against this team as well. And so, the bowling smarts, the pace as well. We tend to kind of forget that he's quite quick. Like he's not express, he's not you know, he's not what you would call like a genuine Taraway kind of quick. He's not even Bumrah kind of quick, where he really cranks it up, past 150 and all on occasion. But he can be really sharp, and he showed that right through the series. And into his third, fourth spell, he's sharp. So, what more do you want from a fast bowler? You just, hope that
Hmm.
he stays fit and keeps replicating those processes, and then those numbers have to improve, I think.
Hmm.
Right, and it seemed like in the because he's had two great spells, remember, in this test. We're talking about, of course, the final one, but on the second day as well, to pull India back from where they were. England were 92 for no loss, of course. Again, it looked like England could get a very significant lead in that first innings. And in that session there, it seemed like both him and Prasid, I thought, bowled really well, and we'll get on to Prasid in a while. But Siraj at that stage was actually bowling mostly wobble seam back to the right-handers, right? And then bowling the outswinger as the surprise ball. He kind of switched that on day five, where it was the outswinger as the stock ball and the nip backer or the wobble seam ball as the surprise one. But that spell on day two was just as important in the end as the one on day five, wasn't it?
Yeah, especially because he had gone for like 30 runs in his first 4 overs when he had been slightly off with the line. But then he had to come back and put in a big effort. If he didn't, at that time the series was gone. Uh, and India have been at that brink for many times. If somebody does not put that big effort, that series is gone. Whether it be with the bat at Old Trafford in the second innings or be with the ball many times in many sessions in this Test match. And again, it was his length was so good. You the one good thing about this pitch was because it was moving, you could be slightly fuller. So the good length was actually 5 to 7 meters and not 6 to 8 meters for this Test match. So, and he was right in on that 5 to 7 again and again and again and again. And the only two balls when there are two specialist batters at the wicket till the time he got Zach Crawley out. When there are two batters at the wicket, he had bowled only two balls that were fuller than 5 meters. Both of them were Yorkers. At that, both of them got him wickets. That's how accurate Siraj is. He it's not given enough credit for. He's not given enough credit for it.
Yeah, and like because I think that partnership earlier as well, right? Duckett and Crawley, it just showed the difficulty of bowling to those two guys when they're both going for it, when they both have that little bit of luck going for them. There's not much you can really do, like because your good length shrinks, it really shrinks. And
Yeah, same
you said that Siraj didn't bowl anything fuller than 5 meters, right? But Crawley was driving him
yeah.
because
So yeah, the
that's the
same
kind of
ball.
batter he is. Yeah,
The height difference between Crawley and Duckett means the same ball, and
is
it's a
cut.
good ball, can be
Yeah,
cut and driven,
yeah,
and both can be middled.
yeah.
I think the height difference between Crawley and Duckett is just extending his
Secret.
career, extending Crawley's career. If if Duckett was 10 years younger and he was still due a growth spurt, that that would have ended Crawley's career.
Yeah. I mean, Crawley's height is kind of like the, Tom Hartley's release point, like picking players on attributes kind of thing. But it works when it works, it really works. And, India were rapidly like falling away from the game. And it wasn't clear to know what they could do differently other than tighten up their lines. But that's easier said than done again when you're bowling to a left-right pair. So that Siraj spell, like to come back to that was, to also like bit of credit to like Akashdeep and Prasid for getting those first two wickets as well, and like uh, then it was a different game because you were bowling to like more normal batters and like you could bowl more normally then. So yeah, but to bowl that spell where he went a little bit fuller, right, Monga, than in the pre-lunch
No,
spell.
he was still in his good lengths.
Just yeah.
Hmm. No,
But
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 the
just
good
on
length
the
shifted a bit fuller if I'm
No,
not.
he was sticking to 5 to 7, and first 4 overs hardly comparable because he
Yeah.
went. They were not his best
but
overs.
he was bowling more outswing, I think, in his first spell, right? And then he went to this wobble
No,
seam more
the
in the
outswing
afternoon
was
session.
for outswing was when he was trying to bring it back into Duckett's pads. Only
Mm,
then he was
Right,
trying to swing.
yeah.
So
right.
yeah, when there are two right-hand batters at the wicket, he generally tends to bowl about only 30% outswingers. But on this final morning, he was bowling 67% outswingers to two right-hand batters.
Is he somebody, this is a question, is he Siraj somebody who bowls better when the batters are not going after him? Because it did feel even at Old Trafford, when the batters go after him is when he might lose his lines a little bit. And I asked this question also because on the third evening, I thought it was interesting that Gill didn't bowl him with a new ball. That might have been because he's waiting for the lacquer to come off as well. But what ended up happening is Siraj bowled those last few overs of the day when the batters were more in their shell, maybe looking to play for stumps, and that's when he got that wicket of Crawley. Crawley's feet moved nowhere for that particular ball, maybe because the field had been set for the short one, but also because it's the penultimate ball before stumps. So is Siraj better when the batters are more defensive?
Mm, I'll have to look at it, but if good batters are going after you and it's coming off, it's difficult for everyone.
Hard for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, but like what Karthik was saying, that he couldn't see what else Prasid Krishna and Akash Dip could have done in that spell. I think the problem was that they were they were seeing them and they were changing their length. They If they had stuck to their length, it's easier said than done, but if they're stuck to their length, they would have got a wicket sooner than later. They would have had to be like really unlucky to not get a wicket in that spell of play when they were trying so much, so many risks. I found that that both of them should have stuck to their lengths, which is what they actually discussed in that lunch break. Before we are talking about that session when Siraj took 3 wickets and Akashdeep bowled 11 overs in that spell with a shoulder niggle. Uh, Prasid Krishna also, I think, got a wicket in that session. Uh, these three guys discussed it and they told each other, even if somebody hits me for a four and I've bowled a good ball, you are there, you have to tell me that this was a good ball, don't worry. But
This is
if I miss the length, then also you have to come and tell me, no, go back to your good length. Which is what needed to be reinforced, and that lunch break came at just the right time for India that day.
yeah, and this is I mean this kind of this is where the inexperience of
Shubman Gill.
Akash, uh, Shubman Gill, yes, and also Akashdeep and Prasid themselves, right? They're still like in their fifth and sixth test matches or something like that. Because last year, this was something India initially struggled with at home against Basball as well. And
Yeah.
they were playing a far more experienced attack then and of spinners who were,
Mm.
moving away from their lengths. And they came back to that and they had to figure out, okay, what fields to set so that, we're not giving away that many singles so that we can bowl at the same guy and, have a way of sticking to our
Mm.
lengths. And if they hit it for four, so be it. But it took them some time to come to that understanding and to be able to like execute it. So for if it takes an experienced attack that much time, it's definitely going to take these guys a little bit of time as well. And so it was, that Siraj spell was again really important even for that the effects of that first session quickly went away because like suddenly India had taken like those quick wickets and the match was back in parity.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, I want to also talk about the whole series. And I know that the emotion at this time is what a great comeback from India. This is a well-deserved 2-2 draw. But how should India see this series? Is this a really good result for a side that was less experienced than England under definitely a much less experienced captain and playing away from home, lost all five tosses? That's one way to look at it. Is there also a way to look at it saying this was a bit of a lost opportunity considering that India still at the end of the series seemed like the better team over the entire 25 days, seemed like the more skilled team. And you guys brought up the point already about selections. I think that there will always be the argument that look, if we had picked more aggressive bowling lineups, what about that 50 from Karun Nair? We wouldn't have had those runs. What about those 40 runs from Washington Sundar at the end of the second innings? We would not have had those runs if we had not had batting till eight. There are arguments both ways. I want to ask you guys a little bit though about how you feel India selected their sides for the series, and this is all hypothetical now, but could it have been better for India had they maybe made different choices?
Just about this extra 50 runs that Washington scored. If India had gone with say Arshdeep instead of Jadeja or Washington, let's say instead of Jadeja, uh, Washington would have started doing this much sooner. It's
Yeah,
not like
I
it.
think Gill, what he said in the press conference, he actually addressed this, and he said they were
No,
very
he
close
didn't.
to playing the
He
fourth seamer.
said it
He
was
said Karun Nair's 50. Yeah, that's what he spoke about. Yeah.
yeah. So I've always been saying play your specialist batter, but also play your specialist bowler. These all rounders are not all rounders for these conditions. They were not used as bowlers at all. What 6% of the overs were bowled by spinners
Yeah,
in
but
this
I
whole
think by the
series?
final test, India were looking at Jadeja and Washington as ahead of their specialist batters, even just purely as
So then,
batters
so
possibly.
then you play them as your specialist batters,
Agreed,
and
agreed.
yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
So India, I think they are underestimating India. India's team management is underestimating India. This batting is as good as any batting lineup India has had. KL Rahul, Yashasvi Jaiswal, Shubman Gill is as good a trio as India have ever had. So India do not need to worry about batting. This is something that they have to realize. Uh,
Yeah, I just want
I
to say, Moni Mokil said, I think after one of the tests, we'd also like to have more runs from our top six. And I was thinking, how many more runs do you want from the top six? Like, where have they given you reason to doubt them or feel that you need this batting depth?
but in cold blood, I still feel this is a lost opportunity. Uh, I just always I cannot get over the Headingley test. In the worst case scenario, it should have been a draw, and India should have come away with 2-1 or 3-1 from this series.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that as well. And for me, it's also the case of, see, it's hypothetical, right? If we had not picked Karun Nair, we wouldn't
Hmm.
have scored those runs. Point is that that's a risk you take beforehand,
Hmm.
and it's obviously it's a risk. You will lose some matches because of that, but the thinking behind that is that we'll actually win more matches than we lose because that bowling is gonna, get us wickets quickly, and it'll also mean that our batters aren't gonna need to score as many runs.
Yeah, that 50 might not even be needed.
Yeah, that's the other way of looking at it. And then when you're playing a five test series, especially when you have a guy who, because of who partly at least because of playing uh, this kind of attack in Australia, partly because of that, he was overbowled, got a recurrence of a serious like injury,
Reaction, yeah.
right? And so because of and that has directly contributed to the fact that he can't play two of the five test matches. So when all of that precedent is there, and when you've lost your best bowler for two-fifths of the series, you might want to have a rethink, right? But they didn't have that rethink. I mean, you can say fair play, like at the end of it, they 2-2, but I would argue that they were the better team in terms of the quality of resources that they had in their ranks, but they were never putting out their best 11s to
Yeah.
win
Kuldeep Yadav.
matches. Yeah, and Kuldeep Yadav was uh, I feel bad for because so in you'd say, oh, Kuldeep Yadav has become a better bowler because he's not played, because that does happen, sure. But on the other hand, he's also become a worse bowler in some people's eyes because, you know,
Yeah.
they be like, oh, if India aren't picking him, they must be like, oh, you know what, maybe they don't rate him enough to
Hmm.
take wickets or whatever. And we don't know either way. But the fact is that with that small sample size of his test career, which I've said even in our previous pod, there's enough evidence that on pitches that don't have help for finger spin, he will still find something. He will still turn the ball. He still turns the ball both ways. He still does enough in the air to cause doubts in batters, and his length control is excellent. So why would he not, you know, be a good option on most of these pitches? Maybe not the oval one. Maybe there you needed a fourth seamer. If you were going with, four genuine bowlers, the fourth one would be a seamer. Fair enough. But most of the rest of the pitches, I'd be picking Kuldeep Yadav. And I stick with that despite the results, despite, whatever's happened. So it feels like a lost opportunity rather than like a, young team. England never had their best attack in this series either. So this was an opportunity to be like, okay, actually we have enough bowling in our
Which is
ranks to
why,
outbowl them. They
which
were
is why
not
you feel it was a lost opportunity because India.
exactly that. Exactly that. If they were playing against, Anderson Broad in their prime,
Nobody.
uh, it wouldn't have been 2-2. England would have won. And maybe even if India had played their best team, right? But when England are struggling with injuries, when England are struggling with injuries that are keeping out their best players, injuries in game that are, reducing them to just three fast bowlers and stuff. In this kind of series, you really want to be like out bowling them, which they still somehow did in some parts of the series. Uh, but yeah, they could have won this. They could have won this series.
It will always be befuddling. If you had told me before this series that Washington Sundar will end up playing 4 tests, Anshul Kamboj will end up playing 1 test, and Kuldeep Yadav will play zero, I would have said India losing 4-0 or 5-0. It's a befuddling thing that happened. I do think that I see some of the reasons why India did it. They will always point to the runs at the end of the day that they got, and they will always say, "Look, if we didn't have these many runs, we would not have been able to defend these totals." But I also did look, and this is something that stretches back to before even Gautam Gambhir's time as coach or this series, that India actually in Sena countries have not been very consistent over the last 3 or 4 years in taking 20 wickets. This was only the sixth time out of their last 16 tests in these nations that they took 20 wickets. It was looking like it would be 5 out of 16 on day 4 when Brook and Root were cruising to the total. So it's something definitely for India to think about that even in this series, they've taken 20 wickets just 3 times, right? And India were at one stage in that period between 2018-21, they were priding themselves on taking 20 wickets in almost every test. Even if they lost tests, they would say, look, we took 20 wickets. Batters couldn't get runs, but we took 20 wickets. It is not happening as consistently anymore. Having said that, the reason I would say that this still feels like not a moral victory, but a good result for India is because we spoke a lot over the first 3 tests about the juju or the luck being against India. It did feel like that corrected at least a bit from the second
Oh
innings of
yeah.
Old Trafford onwards, right? India had their moments of luck while saving the Old Trafford test. And at Old Trafford, they came back from a position where they looked like they were definitely losing. at lunch on day 4. So even though I know Sidharth says Headingley, how did India lose that? There's also the question of how did England let both these two tests slip away? Because at the Oval, they had two big chances, 92 for no loss at lunch on day 2. And then, of course, when they're cruising to victory on the 4th day, that Harry Brooks shot, I know people in England say that's the way he plays. I still think it wasn't the right time for him to play that shot. It seemed like the only way England could lose a wicket was with that kind of shot. And the luck then, England dropped 6 catches in the second innings of this test. Yashasvi Jaiswal was let off several times. Even little things like Siraj, who had been so unlucky through the series, getting that umpire's call from Kumar Dharmasena, all that it did turn India's way a little bit. So it felt like at least there was some parity reached there in terms of India losing 2 tests where they were maybe a bit unlucky, but managing to draw one and win one where they had at least some pieces of luck.
Yeah, yeah, there was some luck going India's way, absolutely, and also this the coming of full circle was Jaiswal benefiting from those dropped catches after having dropped those two. Then, yeah, umpire's call. Poor guy Siraj. He's had six since his debut. His on review, he has had six umpires calls go against him. Nobody has had as many. Nathan Lyon has five, but Nathan Lyon has also had five go in his favor. Siraj's score was 6-2.
Yeah.
Six in his
And
favor,
and there was
two
one
in his favor.
Siddharth. I don't know if you remember, but at Lords, I'm pretty sure that in that spell he bowled to Joe Root, there was one India actually did not review in the end, but it would have been umpire's call against Siraj.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
didn't
So
take the review, but that was
yeah,
one
we
as well
can't.
that kind of
It
went
would have made
against
it
him.
seven,
Yeah.
but that we cannot count because then everybody will
Yeah.
have so many. Yeah, but the 6-2 to be corrected to 6-3 at this crucial juncture of a match with Kumar Dharmsena, who's not generally trigger happy with LBWs. It was the luck did turn around. But I'm just reminded again that topic of Kuldeep Yadav. When his luck turned around, here I am sitting thinking, okay, now Ashwin is retired. He might play at home. He should play at home. He will play at home. But then there is
Akshar
also
Patel.
Akshar Patel. Akshar Patel bringing batting depth. They
No,
could have
this
Akshar
is a
Patel
bit
at
off
nine.
topic, but if India want to keep their seamers in the game at home and play 3 seamers, they can play Jadeja, Washington, and Akshar at 6, 7, 8. It's a possibility.
No, even if they want to play two seamers, they can play Jadeja, Washington, and
Then
Akshar
I
at
think
7, 8,
Kuldeep
9.
will get it. I don't
7,
think you
8,
need.
9. No, 7,
Well,
8.
I think Akashdeep may have saved Kuldeep Yadav's career with that 50.
I'm not so sure.
No, no, you never know, man. It is just the greediness when you see somebody all-rounder, you know. Oh, Akshar Patel, what's the difference between Akshar Patel and Kuldeep Yadav? If we make those pitches, let's at least take the extra runs of Akshar Patel. I hope they actually realize what they have on their hands. Kuldeep Yadav is like a really, really special bowler who can win you matches that others cannot, and they need to realize that. Anyway, I just sidetracked us from the topic of luck. Uh, yeah, finally the the biggest lucky break India got was the injury to Chris Wokes. You never want to see that happen to anyone, but it turned England into a three-man attack, and really big credit to them also. When India six catches went down, India were running away with a big lead. They also put in a big middle session on the third afternoon, and Josh Tongue finally, I realized what he has, why he has got this England team management excited. He can be a really, really awkward bowler. Uh, he in the first innings, yeah, we all laughed at his radar and his uh, just getting one unplayable ball in one spell and taking a wicket with that. But in the second innings, he showed what an awkward customer he can be because he's tall and still releases it beyond the perpendicular. So he has got both a high release and a wide release. KL Rahul, who had been leaving everything in that spell, started to play at balls that he would never have had. And the one that got him out was quite wide. If you look at it in isolation, you'll call it a bad shot. But if you look at that spell and if you look at what Josh Tongue was doing, oh, if he gets his length right, he can trouble any batter in the world.
that shot from KL Rahul was like so out of like character for this series or even last few years. It
Hmm.
reminded me of like his worst series, which was West Indies in 2019. And again, Kemar Roach was the guy who was causing him all those issues outside off stump with that same, angle it in from wide and like straighten it. And he had no idea what to play at, what to leave. So, a bowler who can do that is going to make the best lever in the world. Guy with the
Hmm.
most assured technique and judgment, can completely like, scramble all
Hmm.
of that.
Hmm. No,
I want
so
to
yeah,
touch
England.
upon. Sorry, Siddharth, go ahead.
No, no, I was just saying England have found a really good bowler in Josh Tongue. If he's like the some people compared him with Harmison, but I think he can be like Ishan Sharma once he starts getting his areas right, and he's
Yeah,
like
I think
he
he
becomes
started the
more
series.
refined.
Yeah.
He
I even
becomes
saw,
more.
yeah, yeah. I even saw some because of the wide release, especially the some Courtney Walsh comparisons as well, and the height. So yeah,
Anyway, I want to touch upon a
yeah,
few more Indian players who made a big contribution to this win. Jaiswal, I think Siddharth brought up. And it was such a strange series for Jaiswal, wasn't it? Because he starts with 100. But then after that, it felt like his shot at Lords became this, this target
Flashpoint.
because it was probably the only shot that India played in that test that looked like it was an unnecessary shot or it was a loose shot. There were questions about has he now put away the cut shot because he got out on the cut shot at Edgbaston, which was just one of those things where he got out to a short and wide ball. This seemed like the second innings, this was the perfect scenario for him, right? Where he knows that this pitch is the kind of pitch where I have to come out and play my shots. I will be given license to do that. If I get out, it's not going to be looked at as a massive error or a loose shot. And he just played the game that I think we all enjoy watching him play. He did not put away the cut shot. He cut everything that was even slightly in that zone where he could cut it. And he also hit a lot of leg side shots, right? Which sometimes he doesn't hit. Sometimes he is mostly an offside player. Here he was happily clipping balls off his pads as well when England was straightening the line. So this feels like it's an important innings, even though this would by no means have been a bad series for Jaiswal had he not got these runs. It seemed like it was important given that there were drop catches, there were a couple of shots that were being targeted by people. This was an important innings for him in his career.
Yeah, I don't think he had any emotional energy left to play that old-fashioned dogged innings. He looked exhausted and he just wanted he did the right thing. He just said, I'm gonna just enjoy myself, trust my instinct, and let my muscle memory take over, which I've built over years and hours of getting throwdowns and bowling done and every kind of practice that I've done. And he had luck on his side, but it happens. It happens with batters. Even if he had been out on the first, sh- yeah, even if he had been out on the first shot, as you said, nobody would have said, "Oh, you have played a bad shot," which is what gave him the freedom. And he played that innings, which turned the match again.
He seems like the kind of batter that England would love in their side. I think that's what they were telling him when they were going off for lunch, saying, you learned this aggressive game from us. Now you've also learned some other things from us, what to do just as the session is ending. It looks like England really want Yashasvi as well as part of their team.
Oh yeah, time that running the clock down. But
I think he really had cramp, poor guy.
yeah, you don't know what he always tends to get cramps whenever he plays a long innings.
yeah. And he has this thing of like scoring really quickly without doing the kind of baseball kind of things, playing uh, outlandish shots. I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe in 1995, like that ramp would have looked outlandish, but it's a normal shot now, right? Uh, yeah, he just
Now,
has that.
unless you land up on your back, everything in Test cricket is a conventional shot. You have to be on the floor for it to be an outlandish shot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he has that ability, and he did one small adjustment, which even Sanjay Bangar on our show kind of highlighted, which is moving his guard like towards leg stump from middle stump, and that meant he had that extra room to play the cut. And he's always been prolific in that area behind square on the offside. But in this innings, he scored the most runs of all of his innings in that zone. So he gave himself the opportunity to like play as many shots as possible there, to cut as much as possible, and you know, he just went hard at it and like without any sort of you know, like there was no half-hearted ness to any of those shots, and that's why he sometimes gets more luck than some other batters, because if he gets an edge that's flying over slips or going really hard to them, and
This is what I'm saying. He learns from
yeah.
England.
No, yeah, that first chance was exactly that. I mean, what happened when he drove that hard, the worst case scenario was going to be a very difficult catch for slip, which is what happened, and he was lucky that it burst through the hands of Harry Brook.
Yeah, anyway, the other player I wanted to talk about was, of course, Prasid Krishna. I don't want to make this about selections again, but dropped for 2 tests, dropped in favor of somebody who was coming off the plane. He's ended up with 8 wickets in this test. I know Siraj has been the top story, as he should be, but Prasid played just as important a role. First taking, I thought on day two, he actually perhaps started India's comeback because he bowled very well after lunch. That
And
Crawley
before
wicket he
lunch.
got. Yes, before lunch as well, he had started to at least pull things back a bit. The Crawley wicket was an earned wicket, even though in the end it was a short ball that Crawley pulled. He had beaten Crawley quite a few times before that ball. He had Crawley a bit tentative by that stage, and so he earned that wicket. And then he gets those 2 wickets just before tea on day two, which were crucial because even at that stage, even though Siraj had bowled that spell, it still looked like England with their batting depth could get a 60, 70 run lead, which may have been too much on this kind of pitch. And Prasid, in the first test, it looked like this guy is never going to get an LBW of all things. And yet in this test, his big wickets have come with LBWs, whether it was, I think it was Overton in in the first innings, and then getting the big one of, who did he got Josh Tongue bowled, sorry, on the last day. And of course, getting those edges as well, Joe Root nicking him off after the spice with Joe Root in the second innings. He finally gets Joe Root in the fourth innings. Do you think Prasid just improved as a bowler through this series, or was this always in his locker? And again, I don't know if it would have affected the Old Trafford test, but was he always the guy who should have played that test?
Prasid is still very young in his test career, and you can see he's in a struggle with himself to bowl a good length, and he has not been able to do that. It's not because of any mental error or execution error. He's very, very, you can see and tell that he's wary of, just floating the ball up. He does not want to lose that sting in the ball when he's trying to bowl that slightly fuller ball. He's working on it. Perhaps somebody needs to take him through that process, perhaps a little quicker, where Ishant Sharma took a long, long time for it to happen.
I think it
Uh,
was Gillespie who finally got
yeah,
Ishan to
yeah.
understand. I think what he told him is hit the knee roll of the batter
Knee
as
roll,
hard
yeah.
as you can.
Forget the pitch, hit the aim at the knee roll. Don't even think about where you're pitching. You think about aiming at the knee roll the hardest you can bowl. Somebody, if there's a technical issue, somebody needs to look at it. His left arm falls a little too early. Perhaps that, which is why if you bowl full, you will always end up bowling it, end up floating it. He's trying to do it. It's not like he does not know that he needs
And
to bowl a
surely
good
Moni
length.
Mokil should be in an ideal place, right? With his
Yeah.
height and his type of bowling to help improve.
Monet, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they must be working on it. It's not like they're not. Uh, so yeah, he has again. If you look at it like Josh Tongue, he's not quite as awkward as Josh Tongue, but he's taller than Josh Tongue, I think, or maybe just the same height. But if he can get it right, he can be awkward. Because of his height, he will get that seam movement from the pitch. So he can. He should be kept with the squad. They should continue working with him. And when Bumrah is there, he can perhaps be the fourth fast bowler. But when Bumrah is not there, he can be a third fast bowler for sure.
I think he should have definitely, you know, like I mentioned this in the last podcast as well, that there's a sense of like lack of clarity about like which fast bowler India are choosing to play in which test match, right? So from starting from Perth to now, the 10 away tests that we've had, It's been a mishmash, and like, so it's not been a case of, it's neither been a case of, okay, these are our 3, 4 and we're sticking with them no matter what, nor is it a case of, okay, we're reading the conditions and we're picking this guy because he has attributes for that. There's been some recency bias in some of those selections. There's been some sort of magical thinking where you're like, okay, this guy brings something different which we can, unleash right off the plane. So, and Prasid has been a bit of a victim of that. Uh, right? Because you saw even in the Headingley test, sorry, the Edgbaston test, where, some of the runs he went for were because he was doing a very risk, like a thing with a lot of inbuilt risk of leaking runs, of like, you know, that short ball attack to a guy who takes it on no matter what, with short boundaries as well. And, he came away with 1 wicket in the first innings and like nothing in the second, and he was kind of taken apart. So sometimes that economy, you have to judge against that. He also showed that, uh, he showed that ability to move the ball when he did get his lengths right, even when he was not, even before this test match. So there was enough to suggest that, he could be persisted with. They didn't do that. And then when he comes back, maybe maybe the one thing I will say is maybe credit to the team management that he did show a little more sense of like being able to bowl fuller without being floaty. I think over the course of the series, he was less and less floaty when he was full. And so, yeah, he must have done a lot of work on that, and it kind of, showed. And that last day wicket of Josh Tongue, was it last day or the
Yeah,
fourth day? Fifth
the
day,
fifth
yeah.
morning, yeah.
Fifth morning, that's right. So fifth morning, it was very similar in a way to the Crawley wicket that Siraj took, which is where Siraj moved like square leg back. Uh, Prasid moved like one of his slips to like a very fine third man. So it's clearly like, for a top edge hook or say a ramp, you're setting a field for a short ball and then you just speared it in and like Tongue could do nothing about it. And so, you can see that he's got a lot of attributes, and the contest with Joe Root over both innings, he was troubling him on both edges. There was a little bit of sort of away curve he was getting, and then he was nipping it back in off the deck as well. So I think there was a series of LBW shouts, both from Siraj and him, and the one that they reviewed was Prasid, uh, where it came back in off the track. So he's, there's enough there to say, okay, this is a guy we should play whenever like we think conditions will even slightly suit him. And I think long term he's a really good prospect because he's a wicket taker. Even if he may go for runs, he's going to like, find ways of taking wickets, and that's a precious, precious commodity.
And I think just telling Joe Root you're looking in great shape, that itself should keep him in the India squad. That shows a bit of gumption for a young fast bowler to be telling one of the greats of the game that. There is one narrative that has come out of this series which we should address, which is that India won both tests without Jasprit Bumrah. I do not subscribe at all to this theory that the bowlers bowl try harder without Bumrah or that they feel more responsibility. I can point to Siraj's spell on the fifth day at Headingley or on the fourth day at Lords, where he probably bowled just as well as these spells. On that fourth day at Lords, he was hitting. I mean, he did. I think David Warner watched that spell and called Joe Root's front pad a surfboard because he was hitting that front pad like a surfboard. He was getting inside edges, and it's just one of those things where he didn't get wickets. He didn't get a wicket at all on the fifth day at Headingley and then wasn't bowled by Gill. I don't see any change in his effort when Bumrah is not around, but surely this should be a positive, right? That India will win tests with Bumrah, surely, at some point. But that they can win without him is probably the biggest positive from this series for India.
Absolutely. I have not much to add.
Yeah.
Sidharth is now getting tired of this. It's 7 in the
One,
morning his
yeah.
time.
One other thing I'll add to that is that, both the test matches India won, they were the kind of test matches where they could get LBWs and bolds, where, they could either like the bounce was, meaning that they could hit the top of the stumps with kind of Indian kind of lengths, or as at the Oval, there was enough movement to allow them to keep bowling fuller. And those are conditions in which India have always won test matches. Not always, but in the last few years, won test matches whenever they've had those kinds of conditions while playing outside Asia. When you bring the stumps into play, India are better at that than like non-Asian teams generally. Where they struggle is when the bounce kind of takes that away and you have to try and, hit the shoulder of the bat and get guys caught at gully and stuff. So, and Bumrah has coincidentally happened to miss those two test matches.
In
He
his
has not,
Lords, he
or he
bowled
has
from
not
the other
chosen
end. He
well.
bowled from the high bounce end, where he was hitting the gloves but not hitting the pads.
That's right. Yeah. And also, India could have won those tests also, as we have been saying right through, and it just didn't happen. So, all these numbers of Siraj being better without Bumrah, of India winning without Bumrah, they're just random. And that's where we should leave it.
I know now I'm going to ask next, what are you guys going to miss about this series? Right now, Sidharth's face tells me he's going to miss nothing. He just wants to go to sleep. But this has been a series where every single test has gone to the last day. I cannot remember a series like that. I think it's probably I would say it's probably the greatest series that I've watched India play in the last 10, 15 years, probably even better than 2021 in Australia. Because there, the first two tests were kind of one-sided either way, and then the last two tests were epic tests. But here, every single test had intrigue going into the final day. Even at Edgbaston, which was probably the most one-sided, there was still this feeling that England might at least pull off a draw on the final day or be able to survive a bit longer. And I think this last test, it's the best test I've watched in a long time because it felt like anything could happen on any ball on that last day. It was different even from Lords because at Lords the way India were batting was actually you were feeling that why aren't things moving faster? It was moving very slowly. Whereas here it literally felt that at any time a wicket can fall or an edge can go for four or something can happen that dramatically changes the game. So what are you guys going to do with yourselves is my question now that this epic series is over.
Yeah, it's going to take some time, especially when you're on tour. Your existence is very purposeful. It's like you're very every moment you're thinking about the next piece you have to write or something you have to do, or sort out your accommodation, your laundry, your your travel, your work. It's a very you're purposeful and selfish existence which has to come to an end, and it always does leave a big vacuum for a couple of days. So let's see what happens. I really don't know what to do with myself right now.
Yeah, I still have a couple of things to write, so like the series isn't over yet. Once it is back to, actually, it's back to like a more regular existence because I was doing like video stuff for this series, which I have not really done
Hmm.
before, and like, it's been unusual that way. So uh, yeah, life.
Yeah.
And there'll be cricket again soon, unfortunately. I mean, not unfortunately. It's not unfortunate. Let me rephrase that. There'll be cricket again very soon, but you can't soak in this. You can't think about this series for too long because before whatever the next thing is, I don't know what it is yet, but something will come along, right? So,
I'll tell you
Uh,
what is happening in London today. The 100 is starting.
right, yeah. Thankfully, I don't have anything to do with that, and neither do you, I think, Monga. But
No, no.
yeah, but there will be something, right? And especially Indian cricket, something. I mean, yeah. So there is no
I
rest and there's no reflection. The reflection is happening now, and it'll be done very soon, I'm guessing.
I am going to I am going to miss being agitated with England and Ben Stokes, I have to say, because this series somehow killed the journalist in me and brought out the fan with all the spice that was there in the series. And then Ben Stokes eventually saying what should satisfy Indian batters really had me ticked off. But I'm going to miss that because by the end of the series, to be honest, I have also kind of come around to really appreciating this England team. I think what they do with the bat is quite outstanding, honestly. I think one thing we didn't touch upon was how the test actually changed on day 4 when it looked like nothing was happening from the pitch. But I think Dinesh Karthik was saying somewhere that he asked the Indian team about it, and they said, look, it was just that Harry Brook was batting brilliantly. And
Yeah.
it wasn't that the pitch had gone to sleep, but this is just a batter with extraordinary talent who was playing an innings that none of us could do anything about until he gave it away. So, and even watching Atkinson at the end, I think KK is right. He seemed like somebody who, even with Chris Wokes there at the other end, I mean, how can you not, fall in love with Chris Wokes after what he did, after the pain you saw on his face running that too, even he looked at Atkinson and just said, I don't think I can run anymore. And Atkinson told him just one more run, and then Atkinson wanted to win it off his own bat. So I felt after this series that I would go into the Ashes hoping that Australia give England a hammering. I have now come around on that, and I hope England do well at least in the Ashes and make a contest out of it. And the emotions of this series have been something, and it will leave a bit of a hole. Waking up every morning before the test, wondering what 11 India are going to pick, wondering when India are going to win a toss. Those are all the
Yeah.
things that I'll miss. And as for
I've given up hope on that. Like it's not happening. Not in my lifetime.
you just know that one day Shubman Gill is going to call tails and it's going to be heads. That's what's going to happen next.
Yep.
Although he'll be tossing next time. Anyway, I'm here also to let you guys know our producer is telling me that neither of you guys are going to be done with video after this series. In fact, you might have to record this podcast next week itself. So don't get too comfy. But thanks, guys. It's been great. This podcast has been great fun during the series, something new that we're trying. And I hope everyone continues to enjoy the Karl Marx and Osho of cricket punditry. So thank you all. That's been Rock and Roll It.
TV umpire to director, we have a review. Can you rock and roll it for me, please?